The first time Ava realized she was invisible was the day her brother crashed their father's car and still got praised for surviving. She was 17 then, a scholarship student, straight A track record, working part-time to save for college. But when Ryan, 2 years older, wrecked a $40,000 Mercedes during a joyride with his friends and came home with a bruised lip, her parents had rushed to embrace him like a war hero. Ava stood in the doorway, soaked from the rain, holding her acceptance letter to UCLA in her hand. Nobody asked why she was crying. Now, 10 years later, Ava was standing on the same porch, older, colder, more careful with her heart. Her heels clicked on the wood, a hollow sound like something was missing beneath. She held a leather folder in her hand, and a different kind of letter inside, this one not addressed to her, but about her. They hadn't changed much. The yard was still manicured to a fault. The hydrangeas bloomed just as violently blue. And the family portrait in the hallway still had her cropped halfway out, a printing error that no one ever bothered to fix. Her mother answered the door with a tight smile, eyebrows lifted like she wasn't expecting her at all. Ava. Did you call? No, Ava said. I thought family could show up without notice. A pause. Her mother stepped aside, gesturing her in. Of course. The house smelled like lemon polish and dinner rolls, comforting, deceptive. Dad's in the study. Ryan just got back from Singapore, big contract. You just missed him. Of course she had. She sat in the formal living room, the one they only used when the neighbors came over. Her mother made tea she didn't drink and commented on her blouse being too dark for spring. But Ava only nodded, eyes scanning the walls where Ryan's awards lined up like golden soldiers. Youth League MVPs, startup launch photos, framed magazine features. There wasn't a single photo of her after age 18. Her mother finally cleared her throat. So, what brings you home? Ava pulled the folder from her bag and placed it gently on the glass coffee table. This. Her mother opened it. Inside was a power of attorney document, and behind it, medical records. What is this? Dad signed it last month. He asked me to manage the transition of his estate assets while he starts treatment. Her mother's breath caught. Treatment? Ava nodded slowly. Pancreatic cancer, stage 3. He didn't want to tell you until it was confirmed. We've been working on his care plan. You're lying. I'm not. She leaned back. He came to me because he knew I'd handle it properly. I've been managing his finances quietly for 2 years. You didn't notice because you weren't supposed to. Her mother's hands trembled slightly as she turned the next page. A full breakdown of their assets, trust revisions, account consolidations. How did this happen? Ava smiled, sharp and slow. Because Ryan didn't answer when Dad called, again and again and again, so he tried me, just once, and I answered. The next week, Ava moved into the guest room. By then, her father's health had begun to decline more visibly. The weight loss, the fatigue, the subtle change in how he gripped things. The same man who once lectured her for hours about emotional weakness now needed help getting to the bathroom at night. Ryan called from time to time, breezy and oblivious. Man, I had no idea, he said. But I'll be home soon, I promise. I just got offered a panel spot at Tech Pulse Asia. Ava said nothing. She just scheduled another appointment with the specialist and ordered a hospital bed. In the quiet hours between, she walked the halls of the house that never felt like hers. She touched the dusty piano keys she wasn't allowed to practice on after Ryan started drums. She sat at the kitchen table where her ideas were once dismissed for being too ambitious. And at night, when her father couldn't sleep, she read him medical briefs until he dozed off, because he refused lullabies. 3 weeks later, Ryan finally came home. He swept through the door like a storm in designer shoes. His hair was tousled like a magazine model, sunglasses still on, and a tan that made Ava feel pale and invisible again. Dad, he called, his voice echoing through the house. I'm back. She met him at the foot of the stairs. He's asleep, she said. Ryan pulled off his glasses. Wow, no hug? Not even a welcome back? You haven't been here in 4 years. I've been building something you wouldn't understand. Ava tilted her head. You're right. I wouldn't understand getting a $300,000 seed fund from your parents at 22 while I was still paying off their second mortgage. That silenced him for a beat. What's your problem? He finally snapped. This has always been about Dad and me. You're just the one who knows the password to every account now, she said calmly, and the one who will decide what happens to this house if Dad doesn't make it. Ryan blinked. Wait, what? Ava leaned in, her voice soft but lethal. He made me executor, sole, irrevocable. You didn't answer his calls, remember? Ryan's jaw tightened. He wouldn't do that. He already did. She turned and climbed the stairs, leaving her brother rooted at the base, confused, rattled, dethroned. But Ava wasn't done yet. Not even close. The next morning, Ryan stood in the kitchen with a mug of untouched coffee, staring out the window as if it might explain how the kingdom he never bothered to defend had been claimed by someone he'd always considered a servant. Ava sliced apples for their father's bland breakfast, her movements methodical, controlled, quiet, the kind of silence that unnerved men like Ryan. It wasn't passive, it was loaded, surgical. You're bluffing, he said at last, voice cracking slightly from too little sleep and too much ego. She didn't look up. You want to see the paperwork? He said nothing. She dropped the slices into a bowl, rinsed the knife, and turned toward him, finally meeting his gaze. You know what surprises me most, Ryan? It's not that Dad came to me, it's that it took him this long to realize you'd never show up. He took a step forward, trying to regain old footing. I've been busy running a real business. Not everyone has time to play nursemaid. Ava didn't flinch. And not everyone can afford to neglect the people who raised them, not unless they're sure there'll always be someone else cleaning up after them. The room tensed. He slammed the mug down. You think this makes you better than me? No, she said softly. I think this makes me the one who stayed. Later that day, the family lawyer arrived, Mr. Renshaw, a small, sharply dressed man with polite manners and a dangerous memory. They met in the formal dining room, the same table where her parents once hosted fundraisers and toasted Ryan's startup launch like it was a royal coronation. Now it held legal documents, care plans, and the invisible weight of regret. Mr. Renshaw set down a leather briefcase and looked between them. Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore both signed amended estate directives 4 months ago at Mr. Whitmore's request. Ava is now listed as primary executor and healthcare proxy. Ryan scoffed. That can't be legal. Renshaw folded his hands. It is. Your father was of sound mind. I oversaw the signatures personally. I'm his son. So is she, the lawyer said coolly. Blood doesn't make you responsible. Behavior does. Ava didn't smile, but her spine straightened. You'll still receive a portion, Mr. Renshaw added, but Ava controls distribution, and all health-related decisions go through her. Ryan looked like he might combust. You mean she decides when to pull the plug? Mr. Renshaw raised an eyebrow. If that time comes, yes, but she's already arranged some of the most advanced palliative care we've seen. Quite proactive. Ryan's jaw clenched, eyes flicking toward her. You think you can just cut me out? No, Ava said calmly. You did that yourself, years ago. The next few days blurred. Her father's health slid down a slow, bitter slope. Each morning revealed a new frailty, tremors in his fingers, longer naps, confusion about whether it was morning or night. Still, he asked for Ava, sometimes barely audible, sometimes only with his eyes. Ryan stayed 2 more nights, floating uselessly through the house, brushing against old memories like they might defend him. But the walls didn't remember his trophies anymore. They remembered silence, absence. On the 3rd night, Ava found him in the garage, sitting on the hood of their father's old station wagon, the one she used to ride in, knees to chest, while her parents bragged about Ryan's brilliant potential and reminded her she wasn't as people smart. He didn't look up when she entered. Remember that time I cracked the windshield with a baseball and blamed you? He muttered. She nodded. He laughed bitterly. You actually took the fall. Didn't say a word. I know. A beat. Why? Ava leaned against the wall. Because I still thought if I protected you, they'd finally see me. The words hung in the air, raw and open like a wound finally uncovered. He turned toward her then. I didn't mean to disappear. I didn't know how to deal with them. Ava met his eyes steady. So, you left me to do it alone. Another silence, this one different. He didn't deny it. Can I fix it? He asked. She considered. Maybe, but not by showing up late and swinging your name around like a sword. What do you want, Ava? She took a breath deeper than she'd expected. I want you to sit with Dad tomorrow and read to him. Just once. Something he liked when you were kids. Don't talk about yourself. Don't tell him about your ventures. Just be there. Ryan hesitated. That's it? For now. He nodded. Okay. The next morning, Ava passed the study and paused. The door was ajar. Her father lay propped against pillows, pale but lucid, a thin oxygen tube curved under his nose. Ryan sat beside him, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird in his hands. You never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view, he read, voice softer than she'd heard in years, until you climb into his skin and walk around in it. Their father's eyes fluttered closed, but his lips curled at the edges. Not a smile, but something near it. Ava stepped away quietly. This was not forgiveness, but it was a start, and she wasn't done yet. The following week brought rain, not the cinematic kind, but cold, drizzling days that soaked through your socks and made the whole house smell like damp wood and old sorrow. Ava didn't mind it. The gloom suited the silence that hung in every hallway now. Her father was declining faster. The doctor's voice had softened into that careful tone professionals use when they've stopped promising recovery and started offering comfort. Words like quality of life and peaceful transition began taking over. Ava wrote everything down. She always had. Ryan stayed. He didn't leave after the reading, and to her surprise, he kept showing up, slowly, clumsily, but present. He cooked once. It was bad. He tried to sort pills and mixed up the morning and night doses. But Ava didn't yell. She just fixed it. Quietly. One night, around 2 a.m., they sat together on the stairs like they used to when their parents fought in the kitchen. I was always afraid of you, Ryan admitted, eyes on the shadows moving across the ceiling. Ava blinked. What? You never needed them like I did. You just kept doing your thing. Didn't matter how many times they ignored you. You kept showing up. That kind of self-respect? I never had it. Ava didn't answer right away. Her voice came out lower than she meant. I didn't have self-respect, Ryan. I had no choice. I stayed because I didn't think I was allowed to leave. The next morning, Ava found a letter under her door. Ava, I know what I did. I don't deserve you taking care of me, but you're doing it anyway. I didn't choose you then. I should have. So now, I'm choosing you for everything that comes next. Don't let them push you around when I'm gone. You earned the right to lead this family. You earned it the day you answered my call. Love and Dad. Tears slid down Ava's cheeks silently. She read it once, then again. She didn't cry for his dying. She cried for what could have been. If only he had chosen her sooner. 3 days later, the relatives started circling. It began with Aunt Margaret, who never came unless there was property at stake. She showed up with flowers and a too-sweet smile, complimented Ava's skin, and asked about the deed situation. Then Uncle Craig called from Florida, asking if the estate had a clear line of division. Ryan watched them come in, one by one, sharks sniffing blood in the water. And for once, he wasn't leading them. It was Ava they tried to charm, Ava they tried to manipulate. And Ava who calmly told each one that all decisions had already been made. She wore dark blazers now. Her hair was always tied back. Her voice was calm and slow, the way her mother's used to be, but without the judgment. She held power now, but not out of vengeance, out of necessity, because someone had to make sure no one stole from her father's dignity the way they once stole from her pride. One evening, after a particularly uncomfortable visit from Margaret, who had just heard the house might be going into a trust, Ava walked into the kitchen to find her mother staring at the refrigerator, silent. "Something wrong?" Ava asked. Her mother turned slowly. She looked older than Ava remembered, smaller somehow. "I don't know how to talk to you anymore," she said. Ava folded her arms. "You never really did." That landed like a slap. Her mother didn't deny it. She sat down at the table, fiddling with the hem of her sleeve. "You were always so quiet," she said, "and Ryan needed so much. I didn't know how to do both." Ava didn't answer. Her mother looked up, eyes wet. "I didn't know how to love both." There it was. The truth Ava had waited 29 years to hear. Not an apology, not a lie, just the truth. "I loved you," her mother said. "I just didn't show it in a way you recognized." Ava sat, slowly, carefully. "I wasn't asking for more," she said. "Just enough." "I know." They sat in silence. Two women who built a whole life on words unsaid. And finally, the dam cracked. "I'm proud of you," her mother whispered. "I was proud even when I pretended not to be." Ava swallowed hard. "Thank you." A week later, their father slipped into a coma. The machines kept humming. The monitors blinked like distant stars. But his grip was gone. Ava didn't cry that day. She sat beside him, held his hand, and whispered memories he no longer heard. Ryan came in at dusk. He knelt beside her, a real sadness in his eyes now. Not for the empire, but for the man. "She was right," he murmured. "Who?" "Mom. You're the only one who could have done this." Ava nodded. "I didn't want to, but he needed someone to be the adult." They watched the machine beep, once, then pause, then beep again. Time was folding, and something bigger was coming. The day her father died, Ava wore black slacks, no makeup, and a watch he had gifted her when she turned 15, a gift that was forgotten under Ryan's new car keys that same birthday. He passed just before dawn, with her hand in his and a whisper on his lips that sounded almost like her name. Almost. Ryan wept, loud, broken, uncontrolled. Her mother wept too, the way people cry when they finally accept they won't get another chance to explain. Ava didn't cry, not yet. She stood like granite as the body was taken, as the machines were unplugged, as the house fell into a haunting stillness where the absence of his presence screamed louder than his commands ever had. The funeral was a theater. People who hadn't called in years arrived with crocodile tears and carefully rehearsed speeches about David's vision and how proud he must have been of his children. Old investors, cousins with slippery hands, church friends who never remembered Ava's name, all suddenly surfaced. Ryan gave the eulogy. He insisted. It was decent, poetic even, but it was also safe. A varnished version of the man who ran their household like a corporation and praised silence over sensitivity. Ava didn't speak. She stood next to the casket, holding her father's will in her purse and her tongue behind clenched teeth. Because what came next would be louder than anything she could say on that podium. The reading. The family gathered in the living room a week later, Ryan in a gray suit, their mother with a trembling lip, Aunt Margaret, Craig, and a few other opportunistic parasites pretending to be concerned. Mr. Renshaw stood at the front with his briefcase, the executor in name, but everyone already knew Ava was the executor in reality. He cleared his throat. "The following is the last will and testament of David Whitmore, revised 4 months before his passing." A shuffle of papers. A silence so tight it felt like a held breath. "I, David Whitmore, hereby leave my estate in the following distribution." He began with the usual. Small cash gifts to distant relatives, donations to his university, a portion of his art collection to the local museum. Aunt Margaret leaned forward. To my son, Ryan Whitmore, I leave the trust I established in his name. However, access will remain restricted until he completes a 1-year term of residency in this home, alongside his sister, in a caregiver role for their mother. Ryan choked. What? Gasps around the room. Renshaw didn't pause. Failure to complete this condition will result in Ryan's share being forfeited and absorbed into Ava's allocation. Ryan turned crimson. That's not... He wouldn't... Oh, he did, Renshaw said, and he added this clause by hand. Ava didn't move. Her expression didn't shift. She already knew. Renshaw continued. To my daughter, Ava Whitmore, I leave the house, the land, all remaining liquid assets, my shares in Whitmore Holdings, and full discretionary control of the family trust, including all decisions on future distributions to Ryan or others. Aunt Margaret gasped again. That's absurd. She manipulated him? She was chosen, Renshaw said, sharp now, because she showed up when no one else did. The room buzzed with disbelief. Someone cursed under their breath. And Ava? She finally smiled, just barely. Not out of greed, not out of vengeance, but because the record had finally been corrected. In ink, in voice, in law. That night, Ryan found her on the back porch, staring into the garden lights. Did you know? He asked. I helped him write it, Ava said, but I didn't ask for the power clause. That was his idea. Ryan let the words sink in. So I'm stuck here, with you and her. For 1 year, Ava said, then you can have your precious trust. He laughed without humor. You really think that's going to change anything between us? She looked at him. Yes, she said, because now you'll finally see what I've carried, day after day, alone. 3 days later, Ryan moved into his childhood room. It smelled like dust and dried ambition. Their mother stopped talking much. Grief turned her into a ghost, hovering between rooms, but never landing. Ava handled the bills, the nurses, the house repairs, and now, the man who once mocked her for acting like a martyr was sleeping 1 floor below, eating the food she ordered in the house she owned. And Ava began planning something, not revenge, something greater, something irrefutable, because power was never the point, legacy was. The transformation began in whispers, subtle decisions, quiet renovations, a different energy in the air. Ava changed the front foyer first. The cold, white marble her parents once adored was replaced with warm oak floors. The heavy oil paintings of long-forgotten ancestors came down, replaced by framed photos of real people, the hospice nurses smiling with her father, Ava's first published article, even a candid picture of Ryan reading to their dad with eyes full of guilt and softness. Ryan didn't comment, but he noticed. Each morning he found something new, fresh flowers on the table, a playlist of jazz softly echoing through the halls instead of the usual sterile silence. Ava was building something, reclaiming space, not just for herself, for all of them. But she still hadn't cried. One evening, Ava stood in the attic. The heat made her shirt stick to her back, and the air was thick with dust and nostalgia. Boxes were stacked like forgotten monuments, labeled in her mother's neat, controlling handwriting. Ryan's school, holiday decor, old photos. In the back, hidden behind a trunk of Halloween costumes and faded pool toys, was a small cardboard box labeled in faint black ink. Ava, college, do not toss. She froze. Her mother had saved something. Inside were files, newspaper clippings of Ava's debate wins, her scholarship acceptance, her graduation program with a dried rose still tucked inside. And at the bottom, a letter, folded, addressed to Ava, in her father's pen. I meant to give you this after graduation. I didn't. Not because you didn't earn it, but because I didn't think I had. You were always braver than I understood. I'm sorry I never said the words you deserved. Her hands shook, her knees buckled. She sat there, alone in the attic, surrounded by the echoes of the child she used to be, the one who waited for applause that never came, who sat alone at school ceremonies because no one showed up. And finally, she cried, not quietly. She sobbed. Her grief wasn't just for her father's death, it was for every memory that felt unfinished, every praise she had to earn 10 times harder, every moment of being second when she was trying to be seen. Downstairs, Ryan heard it. He paused halfway through replacing a light bulb in the hallway, frozen, and instead of ignoring it like he once might have, he climbed the attic stairs. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her, shoulder to shoulder, and waited, the way no one ever had for her. The following week, Ava launched something unexpected. It wasn't a startup, it wasn't a nonprofit. It was a foundation, the Whitmore Legacy Initiative, designed to support overlooked caregivers, adult children managing elder care, and scholarship funds for daughters like her, the invisible achievers. The press release went out quietly, but within a week it was everywhere. Because Ava didn't just use her father's wealth, she used his name, and made it mean something new. That Friday, as she prepped the kitchen for their small family dinner, just her, Ryan, and their mother, Ava received a letter, hand-delivered. It was from a former board member of Whitmore Holdings. Inside, an invitation. To join the board, not as a symbolic daughter, but as a voting chair. Ryan looked over her shoulder and whistled. "They're scared of you." "No," Ava said, smiling faintly. "They finally see me." Dinner that night was quiet. Not tense, just quiet in the way families are when the air between them is healing. Their mother, still slow from grief, complimented the stew Ava made. Ryan offered to wash dishes. Ava poured wine for them both. It wasn't perfect, but it was something they'd never had before. Balance. Upstairs in her father's old study, Ava kept the framed letter he wrote to her on the desk. Not on the wall. She wasn't here to glorify the past. She was here to rewrite it, because the house hadn't just chosen her. She had rebuilt it from the bones up, and she wasn't finished yet. It started with an email, subject line, "Urgent disputed inheritance filing by Margaret Lane." Ava stared at it in silence, the cursor blinking over the words as if taunting her. She wasn't surprised. She'd been waiting for this. Aunt Margaret, venom in pearls, had always been lurking in the wings, waiting, whispering, pretending to mourn while counting property lines in her head. And now, with David Whitmore gone and Ava seated squarely on the throne, Margaret was making her move. The filing was official, a petition to dispute the will, citing undue influence and lack of mental clarity in the months leading up to David's death. It was laughable, except it wasn't. Margaret had money, and money made lies louder. That evening, Ava sat in the sunroom with the documents spread out like a battlefield before her. "She won't win," Ryan said, pacing. "This is pure spite." "It's not about winning," Ava replied, her voice even. "It's about dragging my name through the mud so people remember her version of this family." He paused, watching her. "So what do we do?" "We don't fight fire with fire," she said, eyes sharp. "We fight it with records, receipts, voice memos, timelines, everything she forgot I kept." She looked up. "She came after my credibility, Ryan. That's a mistake she won't get to repeat." 3 days later, Ava walked into her lawyer's office with a black binder the size of a college thesis. Inside, audio recordings of conversations between her and her father discussing the estate, signed medical evaluations from 3 doctors verifying David's mental capacity, text messages from Margaret asking to get in early on any asset planning, copies of a letter her father wrote, warning that Margaret might try something greedy. Her attorney, a poised woman named Simone Tran, looked through the binder with growing satisfaction. "You were preparing for this," she said. "I was surviving," Ava replied. "Turns out they're the same thing." Simone smiled. "You're not just going to win this. You're going to bury her in her own arrogance." Meanwhile, Margaret had begun poisoning the court of public opinion. Whispers reached Ava through old family friends. Stories that her father was drugged up, that Ava isolated him, that she used her position to erase Ryan. What Margaret didn't know, what no one yet knew, was that Ava had recorded the final conversation her father had with both his children in the room. It had been a week before he died. He'd said, voice cracking, "I made mistakes with both of you, but if anyone ever questions this, you are my decision, Ava. Not a fallback. My choice." Ryan had cried when he heard it live. Now he offered to testify if needed. The court date arrived on a cloudy Thursday morning. The family courtroom was small, almost clinical, but packed. Margaret had brought a swarm of her side, cousins, legal aides, even a fake friend of David's who claimed Ava had denied him visitation. Ava brought only two people, Simone and Ryan. When the judge asked if Ava wished to speak, she stood without hesitation. "Your Honor," she began, "this isn't just about property. This is about power, and who's believed when a man dies and a woman holds the pen." Margaret rolled her eyes. Ava didn't falter. "I didn't take my father's house. I built its future. I was there through his pain, his paperwork, his regrets, and now someone who wasn't there wants to rewrite history so she can profit from it." Simone tapped the binder. "Your Honor, we have voice documentation of Mr. Whitmore's consent, a notarized psychological report, and evidence that the petitioner contacted Ms. Whitmore with financial interest while Mr. Whitmore was still alive." The courtroom held its breath. The judge reviewed the documents, expression unreadable. Then she closed the folder and looked at Margaret. "Petition denied. The will stands as is." Margaret's face fell, not in shock, but in humiliation. Ryan leaned in, whispering to Ava, "Want to leave now or watch her deflate a little more?" Ava didn't smile, but her eyes glittered. "I'll stay." Outside the courtroom, a few reporters waited, tipped off by someone on Margaret's side. One of them thrust a mic toward Ava. "Ms. Whitmore, what do you say to the claims that you manipulated your father during a vulnerable time?" Ava stepped forward, composed and calm. "My father made a mistake," she said. "He trusted people who showed up only when there was something to take. In the end, he corrected that mistake. And I'm not here to apologize for being the daughter who stayed." She turned and walked away, head high. Not triumphant, established. That night she found her mother in the kitchen folding dish towels. Without turning around, her mother said, "I watched the court hearing online." Ava waited. "I believed you would win. I just didn't expect to feel so ashamed that I ever doubted you." Ava walked over, took the towel from her hands and folded it again. Smoother, tighter. "We were both raised to believe Ryan mattered more," she said. "You were just too tired to question it. I wasn't." Her mother nodded. "That's true." They stood in silence, folding towels like memories. Later, as Ava passed the study on her way upstairs, she heard Ryan's voice. He was on a video call. "No, she didn't just win, she leveled the entire system. I watched it." He paused, then added, "No, I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. She showed me what it looks like to actually lead." He didn't know she heard. She didn't interrupt. She just walked up to her room, opened the windows, and let the spring air fill the space. The storm was over, but something new was about to begin. Ava always assumed that peace would feel like quiet, like the absence of chaos. But in truth, peace was reconstruction. Noise of a different kind, the gentle clatter of new habits, the hum of healing, the awkward laughter of people trying to relearn each other after a lifetime of missing the mark. It had been 2 months since Margaret lost the court battle. She hadn't called. She wouldn't dare. Rumor had it she'd moved to Arizona, chasing some younger lover and nursing the sting of public defeat behind sunglasses and gin. Good. Ava hadn't given her a second thought. Her attention was elsewhere now. The Whitmore Legacy Initiative had exploded, quietly viral, the way stories of invisible children often did. Dozens of letters poured in, messages from women who had nursed parents through illness, been written out of wills, lived in childhood bedrooms while their brothers inherited empires. Their pains spilled out in paragraphs. Ava read every one. One line stuck with her from a woman named Maribel in Ohio. "I always thought if I suffered quietly enough, they'd see me as strong. Turns out all they ever saw was silence." That was it, wasn't it? Ava had thought strength was endurance. Now she knew it was voice. One Sunday, Ryan knocked on her office door. She looked up, eyebrows raised. He held out a flash drive. I finally found it. What is it? He scratched the back of his neck. Dad's audio journals. I remembered he used to record notes for his speeches, and when I cleared out his bedroom drawers, I found the backup drives. Ava hesitated. You listened to them? Just the first one, he said. And I think you need to hear what's on it. That night, long after the house had gone still and the stars blinked behind shifting clouds, Ava plugged in the drive. There were 58 audio files. She started with the one labeled February Confession. Her father's voice crackled through the speakers, rougher than she remembered, slower. If Ava ever finds these, I hope she forgives me, or doesn't. I guess I just want her to know. I watched her grow into everything I was too proud to name. She didn't become strong. She always was. I just didn't know how to praise what I feared. Ava paused the recording. Her chest tightened, not from pain, but recognition, like hearing a song she'd forgotten she loved. He knew. He knew, and he said it. Maybe not to her face, maybe not in time, but he said it. And sometimes that mattered more than anything else. A few days later, the nonprofit's board voted Ava in as president. At the ceremony, held in a modest event hall with white lights and rows of plastic chairs, Ryan stood in the back with his arms crossed, proud, quiet, no longer trying to steal her spotlight. He knew he didn't belong in it. She walked on stage in a navy blazer and soft linen pants. No frills, just steel. I was raised to believe visibility had to be earned, she said into the mic. But that was a lie. Every person who shows up, stays late, shoulders burdens they never chose. You are already enough. This foundation exists because people like us never needed to be louder. We needed to be heard. Applause erupted. She let it pass over her like a wave, refusing to shrink from it. Not anymore. Back at the house, the study had changed. The walls were now lined with Ava's own books, awards, and even a shadow box holding her father's original letter. A small plaque beneath it read, "Seen at last, remembered forever." Ryan passed by, paused at the doorway, then asked something she didn't expect. Can I build something too, under the foundation, a program for male caregivers? Ava blinked. You want to help? I want to learn, he said, and maybe help on the way. She studied him for a long beat, then nodded once. Start with the letters, she said. Listen to their pain, then we'll talk. He smiled. Deal. That night, as she lay in bed, the wind moved through the open window like breath. For the first time in years, Ava didn't feel the ache of being unseen. She felt rooted, not in grief, not in survival, but in her own name. A year had passed, not rushed, not slow, just steady, the way healing often is when no one is watching. The house had grown quieter, but not the brittle silence of resentment Ava once lived with. It was the calm hum of peace, of pages turning, of a mother humming to herself in the garden, of two siblings coexisting not as rivals, but as rebuilt reflections. Ava stood in the upstairs hallway looking at a freshly mounted photo. It was a candid, her, Ryan, and their mother, standing beneath the blooming pear tree, laughing at something Ava couldn't even remember now. A hospice nurse had taken it on her last day working with them. It was the first photo in the entire house where Ava was centered. She smiled. The Whitmore Legacy Initiative had expanded beyond anyone's expectations. Caregiver scholarships, support grants, emotional wellness retreats for invisible daughters and overwhelmed sons. What had started as an act of reclamation had evolved into a movement, one powered by quiet warriors like herself who never asked for applause but damn well deserved it. Ryan had kept his word. His caregiver program was thriving. He ran workshops now, not as a figurehead, but as a facilitator, often starting sessions with, "Let me tell you about my sister. She taught me everything I should have learned 20 years ago." Their relationship was far from perfect, but it was real. That was more than Ava had ever hoped for. On a gray spring morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a single note. Ava, I saw the feature in the paper. You didn't just survive us, you became something extraordinary. I'm sorry I couldn't say it then. I'm saying it now. Mom. Ava stared at the signature. It was messy, a little shaky, but real. There were no flowers, no grand gestures, just the kind of acknowledgement she used to cry herself to sleep dreaming of. And now, it was hers. On the anniversary of their father's passing, Ava and Ryan sat side by side at the edge of the garden. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon. One for him, he said, placing a glass on the stone ledge. And one for us, she replied, sipping hers. They watched the sun slip below the tree line, painting the sky in copper and lavender. Ryan turned to her. If Dad were here now, what do you think he'd say? Ava exhaled, thought for a moment. Nothing, she said. He'd just look at me, and for once, I'd know he saw me. Ryan nodded. He'd be proud. She looked at her brother. I think I finally am too. That night, Ava locked the study and stepped out into the hallway. Her hallway, in a house that once erased her from every wall. She passed the family portrait they'd updated last fall. Her, centered, Ryan to her right, their mother seated in front, holding Ava's hand. It wasn't about symmetry anymore. It was about intention. Ava reached out and touched the frame. And for the first time in her life, she walked away from it without needing it to prove anything. The house didn't belong to her because of a signature. It belonged to her because she made it her home. She didn't just inherit it, she rewrote it. And that was the truest legacy of all.